So friends, did Donald Trump already violate the gag order that Judge Chutkan just issued by some of what he said at his Iowa hate rally and some of what he posted on his third-rate social media platform? The answer might surprise you. Let's talk about it, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, I was in federal district court in Washington, D.C. on Monday watching the Trump gag order hearing. I watched Judge Chutkan issue the oral gag order, and she just followed it up now with a slightly more specific and more detailed written gag order. Let's start with the new reporting. This from Axios. Headline: Chutkan formally issues gag order in Trump's January 6th case. And that article begins, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan on Tuesday formally issued a gag order on former President Trump in his January 6th criminal case. Chutkan wrote in the order that Trump's statements pose sufficiently grave threats to the integrity of these proceedings that cannot be addressed by alternative means. The narrow gag order bars interested parties, which include Trump, from making any public statements targeting the special counsel or his staff, witnesses, or court staff. Trump's lawyers filed a notice of intent to appeal Chutkan's order on Tuesday. Now, friends, here is Judge Chutkan's very short 3-page opinion and order, and I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs from it. And then we're going to talk about Donald Trump's brand new statements after this gag order was issued. And we're going to try to figure out if he's already violated Judge Chutkan's gag order. So I'm going to start on page 2. In order to safeguard the integrity of these proceedings, that is Donald Trump's criminal prosecution in Washington, D.C. for trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, in order to safeguard the integrity of these proceedings, it is necessary to impose certain restrictions on public statements by interested parties. That includes the defendant, Donald Trump. Undisputed testimony cited by the government, the prosecutors, demonstrates that when defendant Trump has publicly attacked individuals, including on matters related to this case, those individuals are consequently threatened and harassed. Since his indictment, and even after the prosecutors filed the instant motion, the motion for a gag order, defendant Trump has continued to make similar statements attacking individuals involved in the judicial process, including potential witnesses, prosecutors, and court staff. Defendant has made those statements to national audiences using language communicating not merely that he believes the process to be illegitimate, but also that particular individuals involved in it are liars or thugs or deserve death. The court finds that such statements pose a significant and immediate risk that, 1, witnesses will be intimidated or otherwise unduly influenced by the prospect of being themselves targeted for harassment or threats, and 2, attorneys, public servants, and other court staff will themselves become targets for threats and harassment. And that risk is largely irreversible in the age of the internet. Once an individual is publicly targeted, even revoking the offending statement may not abate the subsequent threats, harassment, or other intimidating effects. And then turning to page 3, here is the gag order itself. Ordered that all interested parties, that includes Trump and the attorneys, the prosecutors and the defense attorneys, all interested parties are prohibited from making any public statements or directing others to make any public statements that target, 1, the special counsel prosecuting this case or his staff, 2, defense counsel or their staff. 3, any of this court's staff or other supporting personnel, or for any reasonably foreseeable witness or the substance of their testimony. And friends, within hours of Judge Chutkan issuing this gag order, what did Donald Trump do? Well, he held a hate rally in Iowa, and he started to talk about the gag order and said some things that we're going to run through now, and we're going to try to decide whether what Donald Trump said at his rally violates this gag order or not. Now, I'm not going to inflict his voice on you, but here is just some of what Donald Trump said at a rally hours after Judge Chutkan issued this gag order. So Trump first says that the gag order is totally unconstitutional. He then moves on to say, the judge doesn't like me, and he absurdly adds that her whole life is not liking me. And then Trump adds that the gag order says that he can't speak badly about his opponent. So let's take those 3 statements and try to see if any of them violate Judge Chutkan's gag order. First of all, when he says the gag order is totally unconstitutional, that doesn't violate the gag order. In fact, he has filed a notice of his intent to appeal the gag order. He then goes on to say the judge doesn't like me. Well, that doesn't violate the gag order either. And even his absurd addition to that her whole life is not liking me. That's what Judge Chutkan's life revolves around, her not liking Donald Trump. Narcissism much, Donald? But again, that doesn't violate the gag order. In fact, interestingly, Judge Chutkan said that the defendant can't make statements about Jack Smith, the special counsel, or his staff. And then she said, and he can't make statements about the court staff or court personnel, but she didn't specifically say he can't rail against the judge. Feels like she kind of left that open to Donald Trump. So again, I don't think that violates the gag order. And the third thing he said is, the gag order says that I can't speak badly about my opponent. Well, that's flat out false, because during the hearing, it was clear, and Judge Chutkan said this several times, you can rail against your political opponent all you want. Joe Biden, Mike Pence, others running for the presidency. You can still criticize them, talk about them, rail against them. So he just flat out lied to the rally goers when he said the gag order says I can't speak badly about my opponent. But lying about the gag order, I don't think constitutes, technically speaking, a violation of the gag order. Okay, now let's turn to Donald Trump's post on his third-rate social media platform. Of course, it's all in caps because he has to be screaming at everybody all the time. And here is what he posted not long after Judge Chutkan issued her gag order. Do you think I will be gagged? Your favorite president? Hell no, I will not be silenced. Corrupt and evil Biden Judge Chutney has dared to put herself above the First Amendment. Though this was America, because you always have to have a handful of typos in a Donald Trump post. Though this was America, but apparently D.C. is nothing but a banana republic where the monkeys are running the asylum now. But fear not, they cannot silence Trump. They will not silence Trump, because we all know that we have more rights than just the First Amendment we can use to make sure they don't take them from us. Trump 2024. Now, friends, I'll set aside Donald Trump's inflammatory statements, his obvious racism, but I do want to touch briefly on his not so thinly veiled call to violence, because what do we think Donald Trump meant when he said that we have more rights than just the First Amendment, free speech rights? We have other amendments. We have other rights we can use to make sure they don't take our rights from us? What other amendments, what other rights might he have been talking about? I don't think he was referring to the Third Amendment's prohibition against quartering soldiers in our homes. Obviously, it's a thinly veiled reference to the Second Amendment's right to bear arms. He said we have other rights that we can use to make sure they don't take our rights from us. You know, Donald Trump is always inciting violence. But the question for today is, does anything in that absurd post violate Judge Chutkan's gag order? Well, let's see. He doesn't talk about Jack Smith or his staff. He doesn't talk about the judge's staff or court personnel. And he doesn't talk about the witnesses or the subject matter of their testimony. So as stupid as that post is, it doesn't seem like it violates the gag order. Now, it will all go into the Donald Trump bucket of badness. What do I mean by that? Well, inevitably, Donald Trump will directly violate the gag order. We know that's coming, friends, don't we? And so all of these statements, the ones he made at the Iowa hate rally, the ones he posted on his third-rate social media platform, it will all go into the Donald Trump bucket of badness, and it will be hauled into court when Donald Trump does violate the gag order, and the prosecutors will be able to rightly argue, you know, Judge, when he criticized you and said those horrible things and mocked you and said racist things and said your whole life was about not liking Donald Trump, we didn't ask you to sanction him because it was not a direct violation of the gag order. When he lied about the gag order and said, the gag order says I can't criticize my opponents, that was obviously a lie, but we didn't come to you and say, Judge, sanction him. And when he posted all of these things that seem to be designed to inspire and incite violence, we didn't come to you and ask you to impose sanctions because it didn't violate the gag order. As bad as all of those things are, but Judge, now he has violated the gag order. And friends, we know that day is coming. He will say something about Jack Smith or his team or the court staff or the witnesses or the subject matter of their testimony. You know, it's just a matter of time. But here's what I want to end with, friends, because I find this really perhaps most interesting. Remember how a couple of weeks ago, up in New York, Judge Engoron issued what I call a snap gag order when Donald Trump posted a picture and outed and doxed and identified one of the judge's law clerks, lied about her, said she was Chuck Schumer's girlfriend, and that she's the one running the case in New York against Donald Trump, and it's outrageous and the case should be dismissed. And Judge Engoron instantly gagged him, issued a gag order saying, you may not speak or post about my staff, the court staff. And since that time, Donald Trump hasn't said or posted one word about Judge Engoron's court staff. And even though Judge Chutkan's gag order is in its infancy, it's brand new, Donald Trump has made a bunch of statements and posted a bunch of things since Judge Chutkan issued the gag order. And based on the conversation we've just had, it doesn't look like Donald Trump has yet violated that gag order either. So if he didn't violate Judge Engoron's gag order, and he hasn't yet violated Judge Chutkan's gag order, even though he's had an opportunity to, going back to his post when he says they cannot silence Trump, well, it looks like maybe they can silence Trump, at least from talking or posting about court staff, the prosecutors, the witnesses, and the subject matter of their testimony, because thus far, in the couple of weeks that we've had now these two gag orders in place, guess what? Donald Trump has been silenced, at least in as much as making statements that would directly violate the gag orders. And that's a good thing, because protecting the court staff and protecting the prosecution team and protecting the witnesses and preserving the integrity of the upcoming trial, protecting and promoting the due administration of justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.